the Latino community when it comes to in the entertainment industry. And also, when it comes to brand use, who have had a lot of problems and had a lot of conversations with different creators where we have to work twice as hard to get certain deals. And I personally had a crazy experience with T-Mobile alone, trying to get these deals as a Latino creator, and it's been quite difficult. And I feel like it deserves a conversation for us to dig deeper into what's really going on.
I forgot. Sorry about that.
You were muted.
That is so funny. We might as well just do a comedy thing. This is
Kuno, aquí el único experto en TikTok eres tú. Tú no tienes que guiar
No,
aquí.
está bien, pero creo que por eso cualquier pregunta o en lo que yo les pueda ayudar para solucionar, pregúntenme, no pasa absolutamente nada. Pero sí, o sea, sí, está tedioso porque somos muchos, por eso les digo, o sea, creo que cada vez que alguien quiera hablar, podemos como poner nuestra manita aquí para que se les pase como el micrófono y estar también revisando que no estemos muted porque pues ahorita no escuchamos el comentario de Gaby.
Okay. So I just want to translate para los que quizá no hablan inglés y no entendieron, es que Tonio está compartiendo como es un desafío, ¿no? El tema de la falta de representación de latinos en términos de contratos, oportunidades. Entonces uno de los temas que queremos conversar con Kennedy es acerca de pues cómo podemos tener una igualdad de oportunidades. Así que súper buen tema. Excellent, Tonio. So let's go with, who wants to go next? Nicole, maybe? Or Gisela? Gisela, okay. But remember, we need to I'm going to mute myself. Hold on.
Okay, I'm a real estate broker y realmente mi propósito y mi motivo es que realmente toda la comunidad latina tenga esa igualdad que queremos de riqueza en los bienes raíces, invirtiendo para que la gente inteligentemente pues quite un poquito la casa de los sueños y lleguemos a esa inversión en la que realmente se tenga una ganancia y bueno, ver un poquito las posibilidades que puede tener Kennedy para que todos puedan acceder a una casa aquí en los Estados Unidos. Déjame apagar aquí.
Excelente, súper Gisela, muchas gracias por compartir eso. ¿Quieres decirlo en inglés, Gisela, porque hablas ambos, quizá?
Yes, I'm a real estate broker and I help all community, Latin community to have the first home with help with down payment assistance, that everybody can have a house, a home, and make a money and see that this house can be an investment and I'm not, throw the money to the garbage, sino que realmente sea una ganancia una casa, ¿no?
So, same theme of equal opportunity, right? And just looking into those topics to discuss together with Mr. Kennedy shortly. Nicole, would you like to go next? Welcome.
Sure, thank you so much. My name is Nicole Arbor. Nice to meet everybody. I'm a comedian and recording artist. Although I am not a Latino, I'm friends of many Latinos, have tons of Latin followers, and I'm a proud American immigrant from Canada. Yay! My big topic today is going to be ADHD, autism, and autoimmune diseases are on the biggest rise of all time. And specifically in America, specifically hitting different denominations of people that aren't really getting the access to the best food, the best healthcare, the best of everything. So with that, I want to know what Mr. Kennedy's going to do on day one to help curb that and help fix those because we're literally getting poisoned. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. And I'll just go into a little bit of translation.
Also, it's very important to say this. I don't want to be like the villain of the story, but here on TikTok, and when we do a live stream, we have to be careful with the medical stuff because they can close our live stream. So let's use like some very important and specific terms because there are some medical words we cannot use on live stream. If not, we're gonna have to close it. Like we can get banned. Okay.
No way. So like the C word probably, or the V.
And I want to add, hey everybody, tap the screen and share it live. Tap the screen and share it live. We're about to battle Kuno. We're about to battle Kuno. Tap the screen, share it live. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. We're just getting started. Thank God we kind of figured it out. It took us a few minutes. Thank you everyone for their patience. It's their very first time doing a TikTok town hall, at least for me. Kuno's obviously the expert. So I'll just go into a little bit of translation because we want to make it inclusive so nobody's left out. Nicole se quiere enfocar en los temas que afectan a las mujeres, especialmente temas con los hijos, ¿no? Como el autismo, que es algo que se ha visto ahora último crecer muy rápidamente, lamentablemente. Y pienso que Kennedy pues, es la persona adecuada para preguntar esos temas porque él siempre está creando conciencia acerca de propuestas para solucionar todos estos temas que tanto nos afectan, bueno, a todos, ¿no? En general. So, perfect. Who else is up? How about Kuno?
Ok, yo voy a hacerlo como primero todo en español y luego si quieren lo puedo decir en inglés, como porque ahorita creo que principalmente podemos agarrar un poquito más de público si hablo ahorita en español. Bueno, lo primero es que yo soy Kuno, soy creador de contenido mexicano. Estoy súper feliz de estar aquí en esta conversación porque creo que es un punto importante en el tema en el que yo voy a estar trabajando, que es para la comunidad LGBTIQ+. Además de que gracias a Dios tengo la oportunidad de tener un gran público México-estadounidense, entonces creo que es bastante importante que pues pregunte, ¿no? Todo lo que le quiero preguntar a Kennedy. Me parece también vital hablar, ¿no? También como de cómo las redes sociales son importantísimas hoy en día en todo aspecto, sobre todo ahorita que estamos en lo político, pero principalmente me gustaría hablar sobre cómo él va a ayudar. O sea, hay estudios bastante fuertes. Trabajo yo con una asociación que se llama Hispanic Star. Hemos ido a las Naciones Unidas y nos hemos dado cuenta de cómo el 19% de las personas que viven en Estados Unidos son latinas. Y de ese porcentaje hay muchas personas que son parte de la comunidad LGBTIQ+, y que desafortunadamente, pues necesitamos acaparar, ¿no? O sea, todas las oportunidades que la comunidad pueda tener en Estados Unidos, como desde el inicio de que más oportunidades de trabajo, porque desafortunadamente solamente por ser LGBT nada más existe la vida nocturna para ellos, un apoyo médico, porque cuánta violencia no hay hacia personas trans, hacia personas gays, lo mismo con la discriminación, o sea, qué tanta seguridad vamos a poder tener para la comunidad, ¿no? Entonces eso va a ser mi participación en esto. Ahora lo voy a hacer en inglés para pues poder ser un poquito más inclusivos. Hello everyone, my name is Kuno, I'm a content creator, Mexican. I'm very proud to be here. I'm very excited. The topic I'm gonna be taking off is LGBT community and how Kennedy is gonna help our community, because I think it's very important. Like there's a lot of studies that LGBT community in the US is one of the strongest communities, and actually it's the one that gives more strength to the economy of the United States. I think we should be looking for more work, since all of the LGBT people mostly work on night shifts or in night clubs or in night jobs and not in other businesses, no? And also I think we should be taking care of medical take care and a lot of security, since there's a lot of discrimination, a lot of violence towards the trans community, the LGBT community in all the family. And I just want to see what can we do, since I think we can really understand how important and how vital it's for us to be together.
I have a question. Kunos, thank you so much, bro. You're a very intelligent person speaking English and Spanish. We appreciate that. But I do have a question. I thought the panel was about, I think we were talking about anything, but I realize it's more about, hey, how are you going to help us with this problem? Is that what we're talking about? Because how are we asking how he's going to help? Is he going to join the Harris? Is he going to join Harris? Is he going to go Trump? Whoever wins, are we asking how is he going to help us if the other two candidates win? If y'all can help me out with that.
Say that part again, I'm sorry.
When I hear other people's questions, because I thought this was just a panel to talk about, whatever, right, within the Latino community. But when I hear what you guys are saying, you're saying, how can he help us with ABC? So my question is, are we asking him how he can help us, even if the other two candidate wins, or is he in a position to still help us? Or we're asking this if he wins, which, the position he's running, he's not running nor, Democrat or Republican. No one's ever won. Like, what are we asking?
You're muted, Gabby. You're muted.
I'm sorry, it's just I'm getting confused. So basically the issues that are most important to us, right? We all represent, different communities. So just asking for, questions about that. And so, for example, the medical thing, we have to be careful. Like Kuno warned us, we cannot be saying specific words that can get us banned or anything like that. But yeah, just basically, if you guys are familiar with the campaign a little bit, right? He talks a lot about environmental issues. He raises a lot of awareness about, the health industry and whatnot.
My question is this something that he still can help us with if the other two candidates win?
No, so we're not talking in the context of any other candidates. It's just basically about him and his campaign and what he can do for the country and the different communities.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's not mix because then it gets very confusing. Okay, just give me 1 second because I'm here like with his team, making sure everything is fine. I do have 2 more panelists and him, that's why we have the 3 on the bottom that I'm just trying to get on.
Tap the screen, share the live, guys, share the live, tap the screen, send me universe, okay, bye.
Hello.
Caro, bienvenida, welcome.
Carolina,
What's
we
that?
missed
Hi.
everything. Kennedy was here, he gave us all positions, but yeah, he was great, you missed it.
It's not true because I have been listening to you
Oh,
guys.
damn.
So I have been studying you guys, and I know he hasn't even appeared. How are you?
Great. So do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, by the way, I just wanted to give a heads up to everyone. We're being streamed on Mr. Kennedy's Twitter account, on his English account. So just keep that in mind for language purposes. That this is being restreamed
We're on his Twitter account?
through his Twitter account. So
Oh, I want to give a shout out to all my friends, all my ex-girlfriends. We out here. Make sure you guys vote. Okay, thanks.
okay.
Mute so I can talk because I heard the thing with TikTok and all the things with the headphones. I don't have headphones here, but I mean, just to introduce myself, my name is Carolina Rosario. I'm a journalist. I work at Univision. This is pretty cool for me to be here with you guys because it's a different perspective. Normally, we're always on a set asking tough questions, very focused with limited time because TV has that thing that you have limited time. So it's super cool to hear from you all. I mean, and these candidates, I mean, Robert Kennedy Jr., he obviously he's not going to win, but he's extremely interesting. And I think he's going to define the results of this election because it's so tight. And obviously he's in the middle and a lot of people are supporting him. So it's going to be very interesting just to listen to him, to what he has to say. All those questions that you guys have, Kuno, your questions are very interesting. Gisela, I also heard from you about the housing things and stuff like that. Tonio, he seems like he's going to ask like blunt questions, like things that we really want to know. Mis amigos de Ganas con Ganas, Gabby, que she always does amazing on her event. Everything. So I'm just excited about it. I want to hear more from you guys and from Robert Kennedy. I can't wait.
Awesome. So he's supposed to join us. Just did that. Is my microphone? Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. Yeah. They're just going back and forth with me. So he will be here shortly in a few minutes. So we just want to make sure, just for everyone, to stay in the framework of his campaign so that it makes sense, right? So the conversation goes smoothly and everything is aligned with what he has to propose for us. So he's gonna join shortly, and then we're gonna have another panelist, Diego, joining a little bit later. So that's why you see two more. They'll be coming on very soon.
I just want to drop something because I'm reading the messages of the people that are joining this, and a lot of people I know they are sympathizers of Robert Kennedy, and I think it's also going to be very interesting. Antonio brought it up that he explained to us how he thinks he can really win, because of course, when I said before that so far he doesn't look like he's winning because of course he had 5-7% in the polls and the other candidates are too strong, but who knows what he has to say. So based on that, maybe he has something interesting, maybe he has a plan that we don't know of, maybe he knows something that we don't know. So I'm just gonna step back in my comment at the beginning and just wait for him to talk to us about that specific point that I know everybody is interested.
So since it is an open discussion, I have to say, Caro, and you know I love you and I admire your work, that I actually do think he has a chance to win. I think anything can happen to the other candidates, quite frankly. Didn't we just see the craziest things happen to both of them? And even before that craziness, right? I always had that thought. Anything can happen to them, whether it's dropping out, whether it's something changes. They obviously have, you know, all sorts of people against them or for them, but I'm just, who I am is that anything is possible, quite frankly. So I'm so excited to bring him on. I believe he just sent me the request, just 1 second. He popped up and then, so it should be good. Okay, so we should be good. I'll start with my first question and then we'll go around. Just everyone, please remember to mute your microphones when someone is speaking. Y Celina y Filiberto, ustedes van a ser los primeros porque van a hacer algo especial para darle una bienvenida, ¿sí o no? Ustedes son el opening act. Vamos a tener, ahí sí que activar el micrófono.
Hola.
¿Cómo están? ¿Quieren dar un saludo antes del opening act? Oh, no, no sé ahí qué pasó. Celina y Filiberto.
Ya. Que ya está el micrófono.
Sí.
Hello.
Nosotros, buenas tardes, Ganas con Canas, aquí apoyando todo lo que nos ayuden a las personas mayores, a los niños autistas, a las personas que están enfermas en unas camas postradas. Nosotros queremos saber qué es lo que va a pasar con la salud de las personas mayores.
De las personas que se van a jubilar y los que están jubilados, que se han olvidado un poquito de ellos. Entonces queremos que Roberto Kennedy Jr. nos diga, nos explique qué él tiene de promoción para este año, que Dios quiera y él salga para que él ayude a todas las personas mayores que van a ser jubiladas en todos los aspectos, porque a nosotros nos hemos olvidado un poco y tenemos mucha fe en Roberto Jr. Kennedy. Queremos que él salga porque yo sé que él tiene buenos planes para nosotros.
Ok. Excelente. A ver, un segundo. So, I have to mute. Tengo que hacerlos mute para que no se cruce, ¿ok? Pero muchas gracias por estar aquí, por participar. Y para los que no entendieron, whoever didn't understand, basically it's retirement. That's their main topic that they would like to discuss with him, retirement. They're a very well-known, viral dancing couple from Cuba, Celina and Filiberto. Those are their names. So they're gonna do a special welcome, special opening act for all of us. We're just waiting. He's on, but there's just, okay, I think, here we go. Mr. Kennedy, welcome to the Latino Town Hall. How are you?
Very well. I'm really happy to be back here with you.
Same.
My head's cut off.
Let's raise it up just a little bit.
I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you so much for your valuable time. We have something special as a welcome, so let's get started with that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So let's do it.
Saluden.
Hi, Roberto, Junior.
Buenas tardes. Te apoyamos 100%.
Y queremos que nos explique cuando usted pueda qué piensa usted con las personas mayores para las jubilaciones de ellos, porque a nosotros nos han abandonado un poquito aquí en Miami y queremos que usted hable y apoye a nosotros, los viejitos, los ayude en su jubilación, porque nos han olvidado un poco. Yo sé que usted sí se acuerda de nosotros.
Mira. Se metió algo ahí abajo.
No, eso no.
¿Qué hacemos?
¿Está listo la canción?
De mi Cuba soberana, recuerdo aquel murmurio del río junto al bohío, que era una estampa cubana. La libertad fue un trofeo que nos conquistó el Mambí con el verbo de Martí y el machete de Maceo.
Esto es dedicado a ti, que yo sé que a ti te gusta y por eso los abuelitos requetoneros, ganas con ganas, te amamos.
Te apoyamos. Roberto, estamos contigo. Que Dios te bendiga. Beso para todos.
Gracias. Muchas gracias para bailar espectacular. That was amazing. I can't.
Okay. That was quite different, right? It's an opening act for a town hall?
They must be Cubanos, are they?
Yes, Cubans, yes.
Beautiful, beautiful dancing.
Yes, so that's a fun fact for the ones who don't know.
That was worth the ticket. That was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, so basically, for the ones who didn't maybe understand or seem a little bit random, that's Mr. Kennedy's favorite Spanish song. So that's why they asked which one it was, and they wanted to do an opening act. And they also shared what they said in Spanish was about retirement. That's their main concern. And I know, Mr. Kennedy, you're an advocate for economic equality, and retirement is a big concern. There's a lot of people in the US who don't even have retirement accounts, who don't even have enough money saved up for retirement. So let's start with that as the main topic that they asked about, retirement.
Yeah, I mean, this is a problem that I see every day. Almost half the people in our country have no. Can you hear me? Yeah,
Everyone,
so
please.
almost half the people in our country now have no retirement account, and this is a crisis. And I run into elderly people more than once on this campaign who are struggling, who are having to choose between food and gasoline, who are cutting up their prescription pills in half in order to make them last through the week. People who are downgrading their ingredients when they go through a grocery line because they can't make it through the checkout counter. So these are the kind of choices Americans are making, and particularly senior Americans are making all the time. And we have now a crisis where we have a whole generation where half the people in this generation do not have any retirement account. This is a systemic problem. It's a problem that has been happening for many years, and the only backstop today is Social Security, and Social Security is now under threat, and Medicare. And, those are the only backstops for many of our senior citizens, and they're wholly dependent on the Medicare account. Medicare is not, or Social Security is not an entitlement. It is a contractual obligation, and our country is now threatening to default on it because we've spent so much of our money on foreign wars, $8 trillion. If we had spent that money instead, Social Security today would be solvent. But Social Security is now on the brink of insolvency, and it's because of misplaced obligations. And I'm going to end the forever wars, and I'm going to use that money to make sure that we're taking care of our older people in this country. This was the vision when Franklin Roosevelt created Social Security, that we should be taking care of people when they got beyond retirement age, that it was a social obligation, that it was a moral obligation. And we are now failing this generation in that obligation. So, my job will be to keep Social Security solvent, and then to improve the care that people get under Medicare and Medicaid.
Awesome. I thank you for that response. I'll give them a chance to respond. Fabiola, you're the translator. Give them a chance to respond to that.
Muchas gracias por eso que estamos oyendo, porque estamos oyendo que usted va a apoyar mucho a nosotros, las personas mayores, que lo necesitamos, y tenemos mucha fe en usted y tenemos mucha confianza de que usted de verdad va a resolver el problema de las personas mayores, porque veo que se está botando el dinero en cosas que no hacen falta, y eso le hace falta mucho a los niños con problemas autistas que están pasando mucho trabajo sus familiares con ellos, porque nosotros estamos apoyándolos a ellos y estamos apoyando a las personas con cáncer y a todas las personas que nosotros hemos pasado por esos problemas también, y hemos visto que usted sí va a apoyar a esas personas que lo necesitan. Por eso nosotros votamos por usted y vamos a apoyar a usted 100%, con el mundo entero. Vamos a hablarle, decirle que usted merece ese puesto, porque usted sí va a ayudar de verdad. Usted es una persona que de verdad habla sinceramente, porque lo estoy oyendo y sé que es sincero lo que dice. Dios quiera que los bendiga y salga, porque nosotros nos vamos a sentir muy orgullosos de eso.
Muchas bendiciones
Para todos ustedes. Y que Dios bendiga a ese pueblo cubano, a ese pueblo americano, a todos los países, y que puedan vivir en este país con su retiro, su jubilación, y sin tener preocupaciones que lo van a botar a la calle y se van a quedar sin comer. Confiamos en usted.
Muchas gracias. Y gracias para el bailar también.
Por súper bueno ese baile. So I'll go next, and my question is about election integrity. As a Latino community, we're very concerned with that, and we know you support cryptocurrencies. We know you support blockchain. We saw you speaking at the Bitcoin conference. So I would like to know, how can we implement blockchain to improve transparency in the elections, and how do you balance regulation and innovation?
Well, I mean, the Bitcoin actually provides a very elegant and perfect solution to election integrity. And, you know, election integrity is a problem in this country. And you see a lot of times people who are on the Democratic side are angry because President Trump is questioning the election. But in 2001, it was the Democrats questioning the election when Bush and Gore, during that election, when, you know, the election was won by Al Gore, we later found out, but it was, you know, at that point, it was taken by George Bush. And then 2004, I won an award. I wrote an award-winning article for Rolling Stone showing how that election had been stolen. And I'm a Democrat. And then in 2016, Hillary Clinton gave an interview to The Atlantic saying that the election had been stolen from her. In 2020, Bernie Sanders' followers felt the election had been stolen from him. So it's not a Democratic Republican issue. We live in the richest country in the world. We put a man on the moon. We ought to be, we have ATMs on every block in every city and that know how to count and never make mistakes. So we can design systems that actually work. But the best system, the most elegant system would be Bitcoin, the blockchain, a decentralized, transparent ledger that simply cannot be hacked. And that is what I will implement as President of the United States. I'm also going to do another thing, which is I'm going to provide passport cards to every American who's too poor to afford them. And a passport card is a federally issued photo ID. It doesn't have any other information. It doesn't have your vaccine information, your financial information. It's just a straight identification. And you can get it at any passport office. So there's 33,000 passport offices in our country. And I'm going to make it so that any citizen can go into those offices. And if you can't afford a card, you check a box and they will give you the card for free. That will make sure that every American who is a citizen has a federally issued photo ID. And that's going to do three important things. One is there are about 20 million Americans who don't have a federally issued photo ID. A lot of them are Hispanics. They're people who live in cities and they don't need to get a driver's license. There are people who are too young to get driver's license but are above voting age, but they're in school or whatever and they haven't yet got their driver's license. And then there minorities who again have a job that doesn't require a license, and there are elderly people whose licenses have retired, and a lot of them are Democratic Party constituents. So the Democratic Party has opposed any photo ID requirement for voting because it would effectively disenfranchise those 20 million voters. But what I'm going to do is solve that problem. I'm going to make it so everybody can get a federally issued photo ID and they can get it for free if they want. It will solve another problem. If you don't have a government issued photo ID, you are a second-class citizen. You can't open a bank account, which means that 10% of your Social Security check every month is going to a cash checker. You can't get on an airplane. You can't stay in a hotel. You can't visit your child at school. And this is going to solve that problem. It's going to make sure everybody can get a photo ID. Another problem it will solve is at work sites. Right now, it's illegal for an employer to hire undocumented immigrants, but all they have to do is check a box and say, I saw a Social Security card. The Social Security card doesn't have a photo on it. They're easily forged. They are passed hand to hand at work sites, for example, in New York City. And the employers then pay the employee in cash, and they know everything. They know that the employee is illegal. They're paying them anyway because all they have to do is check that box and say, I saw their Social Security card. I'm going to change that so that they actually have to say, I saw a government-issued photo ID. This will dry up the crisis at the border because people who know, people are coming across that border. I interviewed them because they believe that they can get a job in this country. And if you know that if the word goes out that you cannot get a job in the United States unless you have a government-issued photo ID, that border crisis will dry up. And finally, the big tension that we got, the hateful, poisonous tension over identification at the voting booth, that issue will be solved. Al Sharpton and Andy Young have made a commitment that if I issue this order on my first day in office to give everybody government-issued photo IDs, passport cards, that they will withdraw, the civil rights community will withdraw its objection to requiring ID at a voting booth so that you don't have any excuse now to go to that voting booth and show your ID. And that means that we can require that people show IDs at the voting booth, and it won't punish the Democratic Party, it won't punish poor people in this country because everybody will have that ID. And it will take away that source of tension that is tearing our country apart. Oh, that's one of the things I'm going to do to ensure that we have fair elections, but that everybody can vote as well.
Amazing. Yeah, some people are concerned when it comes to blockchain, though, about if it can give us transparency, but at the same time, a lack of privacy. What do you say about that? People who are concerned about it taking away our privacy, like it's too transparent.
You mean that people could tell who you voted for?
Yeah, right. If everything's transparent, everything, obviously, there's a huge benefit to that. But is there the other side, right? That it could be the information too available for everyone. I know that's a big concern in the community, the lack of privacy.
I mean, my understanding, my understanding of it is that that information would be protected, but I will look into that. And of course, that would be a concern because people have a right to privacy when they vote. But my understanding is that decentralized system protects your privacy.
Got it. Okay, that's important. Thank you so much. So speaking of concerns, we're going to go with Kuno, who is going to speak about one of the main concerns we all have in this country and that you speak about a lot, which is that sense of division and tension and hatred for just pretty much thinking different, being different, and all of that. So Kuno, I'll let you go up next.
Hello, Robert. I'm Kuno. I'm very excited to be here talking with you.
Very good to meet you too.
Nice to meet you.
It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you. It's an honor to meet you. What are you talking about? But yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about inclusion and diversity because I think it's quite important nowadays in which generations are changing every year, or I mean every second. Like we see a lot of people doing like a lot of stuff. So I know there's a lot in going on between like US and the world, and in a clean conversation in which there is a growing division in US and the world, how do you plan to increase and promote unity and respect towards different communities, specifically to the LGBT and Latin community? That's one of my questions. And the other question I would really like to ask you is that also if you already have in mind what measures can exist for us to like eliminate violence. Hello. I think you're muted, Gabby.
I'm sorry about that. It looks like we had a technical glitch and he got disconnected, but he will be back. Sorry about that. We're live, so these things happen, and we'll just have to roll with it and be flexible. It's just what it is, right? Just give me a sec. Yeah, it looks like he got, okay, I think he's back 1 second.
Why did this happen to me? I was so ready.
Everything happened tonight. Okay. 1 second.
Bueno, lo que haría aquí el mundo. ¿Ya? No, todavía.
I'm going to mute Kuno and he's back. So once he turns the camera on, I'll let you. Okay, Kuno, go ahead.
Okay, so Kuno, thank you for that question. I just want to give you a little bit of background. You know, my family, when I was a boy, was deeply involved in the civil rights movement in this country and in making our country a true constitutional democracy for the first time in its history. My uncle wrote the Voting Rights Act. My uncle, John Kennedy, my uncle Ted Kennedy, right immediately after his death, passed it. But my home when I was growing up was a satellite White House. My father was the director of the Justice Department, and he was directing the integration of University of Mississippi, University of Alabama, the Freedom Riders, the Selma March, all of these big cases at that time, which my father was working with Dr. King to make sure that Black Americans were given the right to vote. My family was deeply involved with other minority groups, farm workers, with Cesar Chavez, Hispanics all over the country. My uncle launched the Viva Kennedy movement and brought the Hispanic community together as a political force for the first time in our history. American Indians on the reservations, etc. And my uncle Ted Kennedy, who was in the Senate for 50 years, was immediately recognized after, you know, the Stonewall protests, which were in 1969, a year after my dad's death. When the Stonewall protests happened, it was a civil rights protest, and my uncle understood that this was a civil rights issue, and he was the first senator to take the cause of gay rights, which we now call LGBTQ plus, gay rights on as one of his primary priorities. And in 1980, he campaigned for the presidency. He was the first American presidential candidate to campaign on a platform of gay rights. He went to the Castro, which includes the gay section in San Francisco. I campaigned there with him. I was 26 years old at that time, and I campaigned at the Castro many times myself. Teddy kept sending me back as a surrogate, and we got very, very strong support from that community. And then in subsequent years, I worked with ACT UP in New York City, representing them on a series of lawsuits. So this is an issue that has always been a priority for me. And, you know, it seems to me just like a no-brainer that we need to have compassion for each other. We need to treat each other with kindness and respect, and that you shouldn't be biased against because of the person that you choose to love or because of the person that you choose to be. Everybody, we're Americans. We pride ourselves on a diverse society that is the source of our strength, and we need to avoid the seduction of the notion that we can advance ourselves as a people by leaving our poor brothers and sisters behind, or people who have a different skin color from us, a different language, a different culture, or a different sexual orientation. These are all just basic human rights issues, and we are supposed to be, in our country, the template, the role model for the rest of the world about how to treat human beings with dignity, how to allow everybody to have their own path, how to allow everybody to find their own road to happiness, to fulfillment, to decide who they will love and who they will live with. And those are just seem to me like fundamental issues. They're fundamental parts of who we are as a people in our country. And, I will defend all of those rights. And I, will try to be, as I have throughout my lifetime, a role model for compassion, for kindness, for understanding, and for respect for other human beings.
Thank you for this, because I think, as you said, it's like we're talking about basic values, which is love and respect. And I think it's very beautiful, everything that you're saying about this being like fundamental and one of your prior things, since, yeah, like we're talking about minor communities that altogether become a really big community. So this is beautiful, and I think I'm okay. Bye. I'll go for you. Thank you.
I'll say this, I'm very proud of my uncle because he campaigned in 1980 at a time when many Americans found that shocking, and they found it, they couldn't understand that this was a civil rights issue. And, my family had also been involved in the civil rights movement for Americans with intellectual disabilities. There were also a minority that had been subject to tremendous bigotry and loss of life, that they were warehoused and locked up. And my uncles closed those facilities. My aunt Eunice Shriver started Special Olympics, and they recognized that as a civil rights movement. So I think they were quicker than other Americans to recognize the struggle for gay rights as a civil rights struggle. And gays at that time were, among the most oppressed of minorities, and nobody took their side. They were ridiculed. They were made to seem less than, and there was no protections, and there was no organizations for a long time until Stonewall, until those very courageous warriors stood up at Stonewall. It was the first time that gays ever stood up and said, wait a minute, we want to be treated like human beings. My uncle recognized that, and I'm very proud of him for that. And as I said, he campaigned on that issue, the first presidential candidate. But then in 1987, the AIDS crisis hit, and my uncle was the first one to respond. He was 50 years. He was the chair of the Senate Health Committee, and he did something that really shocked everybody. He hired as his chief of staff a gay man, Terry Byrne. He was the first person in the United States Senate have an openly gay staffer on his staff, and it was his chief of staff. And Terry Byrne was not just gay, but he had AIDS, and he was open about it. And at that time, you cannot imagine how shocked the other senators were at Teddy's decision, because at that time, people with AIDS were pariahs. They were regarded, people thought you could catch it through the air by looking at people, by getting too close. And Teddy said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to make everybody understand, and we're going to set an example in the United States Senate that people who have injuries, who have illnesses, should not be treated as outcasts or pariahs. And Terry was open about AIDS, and people just had to get used to it, and they did very quickly. But it was a real unpopular stand for civil rights. And then again, I'm very, very proud of my uncle for taking that battle on, and for being among the first politicians to really champion gay rights. And I want to live up to that legacy.
And it's beautiful because you literally have this in your blood. So that's the most important thing. Like, thank you for seeing us. Thank you for making us part of your speech, of your, all of what you're doing right now. So I just want to give you a thank in my heart. And as if I can speak, in the LGBT community, as in the world, I would really, really want to thank you for this. And yeah, you were just saying about this person who had AIDS. So it's really crazy how people dehumanize those people. You know, it's just we're all humans. Like, it's not about who we love. It's not about who we want to be. We're just all want to live happy. You know, we all want to be part of our community, of this world, of this part. So thank you for all of what you're doing and all of what you're saying.
Thank you, Kuno. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Amazing, amazing, very
Yes.
powerful.
Me too.
I'm sure we'll have an opportunity soon. So I would like to switch to women's issues with Nicole. Nicole, remember about what Kuno's the expert in TikTok world, new here, kind of, not all,
Yes.
but there's some words that TikTok doesn't allow or something.
Yeah, so here's the
Yes.
thing. Since we're gonna talk about like your topic, Nicole, we just have to be careful in which not maybe go into like very specific details about your topic in which you're gonna say. And whichever, if you want to ask me, like, I don't know, the specific word, if I can help you, like, getting into the question, as in, because we don't want to get banned from the live stream, we want to, like, continue talking.
Okay.
So whichever question you have, no worries, I'll be here helping you, okay?
Yeah, thanks. I think we'll be good just asking the question. So I can ask, and I think we're good. But just so you know, Mr. Kennedy, great to meet you. Nicole Arbor, how are you?
Great to meet you, Nicole.
Wonderful. So first of all, I'm so freaking proud of you for taking on mainstream establishment, everything that's going on, obviously, in politics right now. But the biggest thing that's close to my heart is what's going on with our healthcare system. And you're the only candidate that I've seen speaking up and speaking out about it. So when it comes to the 4 letters, there's some different things on TikTok we're not allowed to say. So the AD, follow, the disease that is suddenly hitting a lot of young youth right now, specifically in America, at the highest rates ever, and autoimmune diseases. They're skyrocketing in North America, and specifically America out of nowhere. We probably both know it has something to do with different foods, different medications, things like that. I kind of want to know what you would do on day 1 to start turning that around.
Yeah, I mean, the big issue is, the chronic disease epidemic. And when my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, about 60% do. It is the biggest cost to our budget. It's 5 times our military budget, 4.3 trillion a year. We now have the most expensive healthcare in the world. We pay 2 or 3 times per capita what Europeans pay. And we have the worst health outcomes. We're 79th in the world. We're below Cuba. We're below Costa Rica. We're below Nicaragua. We're below Mongolia. And a lot of it is because our kids are so sick. They're under assault from, as you say, toxic foods, toxins in the water, toxins in the air, toxins in our medications. And I give you one example of the diabetes. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician would see about 1 case of juvenile diabetes in his whole career, 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And diabetes disproportionately impacts people in the Hispanic community. And it is a crisis in the Hispanic community. And, when I was a kid, I only met 1 kid my whole life, my whole childhood, who had diabetes. And it was shocking to everybody. There was only 1 kid in the school, and we all knew him because he had to give himself shots. But today they're in every classroom. And the cost of it is higher, of mitochondrial dysfunction, which is diabetes, is now higher than our military budget. And nobody's asking the question, where is it coming from? There's no other country in the world that has our level of chronic disease. And it's happening here because we have bad food. There are 1,000 ingredients in our food that are banned in Europe. And we have medications that have not been properly tested. And, some of them that I'm not going to mention because I assume wiped off the map by TikTok if I do. But What I'm going to do on day one is, there are a number of culprits for the chronic disease epidemic. One of those is glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup pesticide. EPA was asked by Congress to tell us what year the chronic disease epidemic began, and they said it's a red line, 1989. Ooh. So you have to look for a toxin that became, the chronic disease is, these epidemics are not caused by genes. They're caused by an environmental toxin. There has to be an environmental toxin, probably a lot of different ones, because our kids today are swimming around in a toxic soup. You have to look for a toxin that was created, became ubiquitous, widespread in 1989, that affected every demographic from Cubans in Key Biscayne, Miami, Inuit Indians in Alaska, all the same year. And there's only a handful of those. There's glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup, neonicotinoid pesticides, atrazine, the flame retardants and forever chemicals, PFOAs, PFASs. By the way, I've litigated on almost all of these. High fructose corn syrup, again, which follows that timeline. Cell phone radiation, and then certain medications that became mandatory for our children during that period. So those are the culprits, and it's very easy to do the science to figure out which ones are responsible. It's probably all of them. It's probably because kids who get injured are kids who have mitochondrial dysfunction. The mitochondrial are the energy systems of your cell. And when they're not functioning, when they get overwhelmed by toxins, they stop working, and there's a cascading effect where your cells die. And that cascading effect, which takes place over time, ends up causing neurological injuries. And then a lot of these toxins overstimulate your immune systems, and that is what autoimmune disease is. So a lot of them operate under the same biological pathways. And what I'm going to do when I get on day one, I'm going to go down to NIH. And NIH has a $42 billion annual budget. It distributes that money to 56,000 scientists in universities, mainly around our country, to do research. It used to be they were doing scientific research on what makes people sick. They don't do that anymore. What they mainly do now is to develop drugs for the pharmaceutical industry. As it turns out, the NIH scientists get to share of the royalties on the drugs they produce. So that's all they want to do right now. I'm going to tell them they can't do that. I'm going to tell them they can't do that anymore. And I'm going to tell them, now we're going to find out why are our kids the sickest kids in the world? Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have in this country. During COVID, we had the highest death rate of any country in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths. We only have 4.2% of the world's population. So whatever we were doing was bad. We had the worst record of any country in the world. And what CDC says, the reason so many Americans died from COVID is because we have so much chronic disease. The average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. So they had obesity, they had diabetes, they had asthma, and one other thing. And if you listen to those diseases that I just listed and think about the Hispanic community and how many Hispanics have asthma, how many have obesity, how many have diabetes, you can see that is a target population. And if we're going to improve our lives, we've got to end the chronic disease epidemic. And what I'm going to do immediately, I'm going to redirect all that money to figuring out why we have all this chronic disease, and then I'm going to eliminate it. And it's very easy to eliminate these exposures. You produce enough science to show that, for example, high fructose corn syrup is connected to the diabetes or the obesity epidemic, once you have enough science, then the lawyers come in and they sue that company and they can stop them from producing it. That's what we did with glyphosate, with Roundup. Everybody's there. You'll never get rid of Roundup because it's everywhere. Everybody uses it. You'll never get the glyphosate out of it. What happened? We sued them and we had 40,000 people, clients, home gardeners who would get non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from Roundup.
Wow.
And the first case, and we were trying those cases one at a time. The first case, we won 289 million. The second case,
Let's go.
we won 89 million. The third case, we asked for $1 billion, and the jury gave us 2.2 billion.
Boom.
And Monsanto came to the negotiating table and said, okay, what do you need? And we settled all the cases with them, and they agreed to remove glyphosate from home gardening products. So that's how you get rid of them, and that's what I'm going to do. It's beginning day one.
Let's go.
Epidemic.
That's America. Make America healthy again. I love that. That's fantastic. I believe a healthy population is a happy population, is a population that's working their butts off and being a great country. That's amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for answering the question.
Thank you. Is this
Amazing. So we have a new panelist. Welcome, Diego. How are you? Do you want to introduce yourself? You met Diego before, but for the ones who don't know you and are watching, we're also streaming through his Twitter. So there's tens of thousands of people that are watching. So go ahead and introduce
I
yourself.
just retweeted.
What
Hey,
happened?
Diego. Good to see you again.
Sorry, you're muted. Hold on.
There, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much for the invitation. Glad to see you again. So, last time we spoke, I gave you some questions, and you were super kind and super nice and thoughtful on responding to them. And now, even joining lately on the conversation, and I have to express my empathy and my sympathy to your last statement, because my oldest child has a mitochondrial disease. My oldest child was diagnosed when he was 2 years old with Leydig syndrome, which is an extremely rare incidence of mitochondrial genetic mutation. So I'm very empathic and very thankful for you speaking out to our families, because only people that have this type of genetic mutations within their households, we really understand how tough it is. How tough it is, not only for the fact that it's hard to find blame, responsibility, and accountability, but also it's very hard to find shelter and help on how to address that problem. No, and I'm going to start even a little bit out of script, because I thought about two other questions that I would like to ask you today. But I would like to begin there with beyond the fact that yes, you have a very proven track record of litigating and going through the legal route of holding accountability to these big companies. Beyond that accountability to big pharma and to these big food companies, which are very much accountable for mitochondrial mutations, how do you plan to help the families? Because as a father of a child with mitochondrial disease, I've helped and I've tried to help many families with similar difficulties, and most of them are not as lucky as I am. They have to find a way to work and at the same time provide care to a child that is very much in a very difficult relationship to reality, and also the paradigm of ultra productivity. How does you shelter or provide a matter of dignity to these families, that they are able to find a dignified way of living and fitting into a society that so heavily emphasize on the importance of productivity? With these children that are today our children, 1 in every 54 within the autism spectrum or mitochondrial mutations that are outside of the paradigm of productivity. How would you address this problem?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I would do is that I will do is to enlarge the scope of research at NIH, and also the scope of the drug approval process at FDA. Look at therapies that are not necessarily going to make money for the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've seen a lot of kids with mitochondrial disorders who are treated by, we have in our country extraordinary, the best in the world, functional medical physicians, integrative medical physicians who are treating autoimmune diseases and who are treating mitochondrial dysfunctions in ways that are, let's say, alternative methods that are not sanctioned by the pharmaceutical industry because they can't be patented and they're not making money for the big pharmaceutical companies. And NIH and FDA do everything in their power to destroy those options for families. They're not thinking of public health. They're not thinking of, you know, how to heal, how to make people better. Their primary objective is serving the mercantile interests of the pharmaceutical companies with whom they're partnered. 50% of FDA's budget comes from big pharma.
Yeah.
So that's who they're working for. They're not looking to make your child healthy or to relieve the burden of taking care of a child who has these diseases that can be very debilitating.
Yeah.
And they're not also looking at the kind of poisons that aggravate it. You know, a lot of kids with mitochondrial disorders, when they're put on organic diets, when they're put on certain diets, they do much better.
Yep.
Certain foods, like I know some who react badly to gluten, to sugars, there's a whole categories of foods that, and the FDA is not going to look at that, and NIH is not going to look at that. And, you know, we can heal a lot of food is medicine. And we can heal a lot of these children who are injured by giving them good diets. But FDA will never tell you that. And then you have other agencies that, like USDA, which are run by the big food processors and the big ag industry, whose job is literally to poison the American public.
So if I may just ask like a quick follow-up question on that same point, and again, thank you so much for this empathy, and I'm telling you much more than an interviewer point of view as a family that has suffered this reality. You know, what could you tell us about the today, in a way, implied relationship between the food industry being the main cause of so many of these diseases, but being disconnected from the responsibility of the diseases that they produce? Because what is weird for me is that, in a way, the US government funds a lot of these food companies. They fund innovation, they fund technology, they fund expansion. They are even partners in some regards, but they are disconnected from the fact that, for example, America has a huge problem of heart problem, cardiac arrest, obesity, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer, which all of them are related to bad food habits. So in a way, it's like the government is funding the food industry and then paying for the bill in the medical bills. And in both ends, people are just seen as wallets with legs. They're just like consumers for the food industries and bill payers for the health system. You know, and then to finalize my question, is the market in a way a solution for this, since we are treated as patients and as consumers because of the market logic? Or do you think these categories need to be operated outside of the logic of the market?
Well, I don't think we really have a market. You know, I think we don't have free market capitalism. We have corporate crony capitalism, and we have a corporate kleptocracy. And in a true free market, the actors in the market would pay the true cost of bringing their product to market, and that includes paying for all the people that they poison. And you would have people who ate food, you know, that was produced, processed food, would be fully informed about what they're eating. And the only way that they get away with it is by lying to the public about that food and through subsidies. Now, a subsidy, if you have a subsidy, you're not part of free market capitalism. That is socialism or, you know, communism or something. It's not free market. And processed food is the food that gets virtually all the subsidies. the bad food gets all the subsidy. I would say virtually 100% of federal subsidies are going to terrible food processes, to GMO corn, the processed foods, to the foods that, and listen, I would, what you were saying, my head wants to explode because, I'm thinking about this all the time.
Yeah.
How corrupt the entire system is. And I want to say something else. My vice president, Nicole Shanahan, has a daughter who had mitochondrial disorder. And because of that mitochondrial disorder, she was given a medicine she shouldn't have gotten. And that medicine caused that cascading effect and debilitated her.
Yeah.
And so Nicole has spent about $100 million studying the impacts of mitochondrial disorder. So I'd love to put you together with her. But the entire food system in our country is utterly corrupt. Yeah. And processed foods. I had an assistant who worked for me for about 15 years when I first started at Riverkeeper. And she had worked in White Plains, New York. She had worked for Kraft, which was a food company. And she left Kraft because Kraft was purchased by Philip Morris, which was a tobacco company. And the day that they took over, they put ashtrays on all the desks and encouraged people to smoke in the inside.
Yeah.
But they also began bringing the scientists from the tobacco industry in to make foods addictive. And they use all kinds of chemicals like monosodium glutamate, which causes hunger and a feeling of emptiness. And a lot of these, and certain kinds of sodiums and salts that give you cravings, that after you've eaten, even if you fill yourself up, you still have the craving. And they the same thing they did with tobacco, they did it with processed foods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those foods that you're eating, and those are the most heavily subsidized. This is where all the federal subsidies go, into building those kind of foods, which are poisoning you. And they're addicting you, and they're giving you obesity, and they're giving you diabetes, and they're giving you cancer, and all these other diseases, and they don't care because they're also working for the pharmaceutical industry. That then we're systematically creating customers for pharmaceutical products.
Exactly. It seems like a round business. It seems like a perfect business.
Ozempic is the perfect example. We give 1 out of every 3 kids is pre-diabetic or diabetic. And what's the solution? Well, the obvious solution is dietary and lifestyle, right? It's not more medicine.
Preventive.
They're giving them Ozempic, and they're giving it to them for life. And it costs, huge amounts of money, and it's going to bankrupt our system. And it's going to make those kids sicker and sicker and sicker, and they're going to be eating the same stuff that poisoned them in the first place. The whole system is so crazy and so corrupt, and no other country in the world is anything like this. I'm going to end it. I'm going to end it beginning on day 1, and I know exactly how to end it. And the way I'm going to end it is by creating science that is true and giving that science to the attorneys who will then sue the companies, and then it's over.
Super. Thank you for the response, Mr. Kennedy. Gabby, do you want me to follow up on the other questions, or you want to go around the panel?
I'm going to go with Tonio, Gisela, and then we can come back to you. Okay. Mm-hmm. So go ahead, Tonio, with the next question.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for attacking these questions head on and not beating around the bush like others. I have an immigration question. I know you touched on that for a little bit, but I just wanted to dive into the other side of that. And my question is, how will you ensure that DACA recipients and TPS holders are able to continue living, working, and thriving in the communities they have been contributing for decades? Like, what will you do to protect their more than 500,000 U.S. Citizen children?
Wait, I didn't hear that question. You said, what am I going to do to protect whom?
What are you going to do to protect their more than 500,000 U.S. Citizen children?
Oh, the DACA kids?
Yeah.
Oh, well, tell me this. I mean, they're U.S. citizens, right?
Yeah. The majority of the DACA recipients and TPS holders have lived in the country for over 20 years, and they're relying on their work permits and protections under the program to provide for their families to continue contributing in our communities.
So what is the issue? That their parents will get deported and that they...
Yes.
And so what is your solution?
My question is, what can you do so they can continue living, working, and thriving in the communities that they've been contributing to?
Well, if they're U.S. citizens, then they can stay here. So I'm trying to understand, all right, are you talking about minor children?
So the DACA recipients, I'm talking about their children that are, their children, protect their children that are here. Because there's a lot of children that came when they were 2, 3 years old, 4 years old, undocumented, and their parents are working on some type of permanent situation. What would you do for them? Because there's over 500,000 of children of DACA recipients.
So the DACA recipients have they gotten their citizenship now?
I'm sorry?
Have they gotten their green cards, their working papers? Are you talking about the children of parents who have green cards and working papers?
Yes.
And is the U.S. government trying to deport those children?
Well, in some cases there have been. I don't know what they're doing now, but what would you do?
Tell me exactly what the issue is, and then I'd love to hear what your solution is to it.
Just the recipients that are here right now, where their temporary paperwork that allowed them to stay here is running out, and now they're running against the time. And once you pass that time, you're supposed to leave the state. The country. And some people don't have the means to leave. Some people don't even recognize their country anymore because this is their country for all intents and purposes. They've been living here for over 20 years. So when that time frame runs out, what laws would be put in place to protect them? If you ask me, I would extend it this time if they can prove they've been a part of this community and contributing. I want to know, what would you do to support said people?
Yeah, I would not allow the policy that separates families or divides families or that supports people who've been here for a significant amount of time and are paying taxes and contributing to the community. I think that those, we need to seal the border first. We need to seal the border, and we need to have, wide gates and make sure that people who come in legally into this country, who wait in line and do the paperwork, that they have a fast track to citizenship. And we need to make sure that all businesses in this country can get access to workers from abroad. But we need to seal the border. We cannot have the Mexican drug cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, and the other cartels running U.S. border policy. I watched that firsthand, and it's a disaster. And I'll say this, that during the last decade of his life, from about 1983 to 1993, I worked very closely with Cesar Chavez, and he had two issues. One, the issue I was working on with him, which is pesticide poisoning of Hispanic farm workers, who are disproportionately injured by pesticide. But the other issue that he had was making sure the border was closed, because he recognized that the undocumented migrants who were coming across were diminishing his capacity to bargain or good wages and conditions for the American workers that he was protecting. And I think that's still an issue. And I think we should have wide gates where people can get legally into this country very, very quickly. And also high walls that make sure that, the drug cartels aren't running immigration policy. Once we have that border sealed. Some people will be deported, or some of the bad people who've come across. But I would not have a deportation policy that tore families apart, or that deported people who've been here for long periods of time and who paid taxes in our communities.
Great. So we're gonna go because we want to make sure we have time for everyone. Gisela, go ahead. Then we'll go back to Diego.
Hi, Mr. Robert. I'm Gisela Rojas. I'm Venezuelan. Soy venezolana. Tengo dos. I'm going in Spanish and English because I invite a lot of community who want to know you. So I'm going in Spanish and English. I'm a real estate broker and also own a tax company. So I help people, Latino people, to have their first house and to make their first business, their first company to make a business. So these two things are very important for our community: housing and taxes. So it's very important for us to know if you have some strategies to propose to make housing more accessible for Latin people, and same for the people who want to make the first business in the United States. I fight a lot because the people don't have to do Uber all the time. They can have their business, they can grow, they can have their own money without work every day at the same time. So I want to know, and I know that my community wants to know what strategies you have for people for can't afford for a house. For me, it's a right for everybody can have a house and also own business.
Yeah, I mean, the housing is one of my biggest priorities, and it's an issue that I started speaking on day one of this campaign, and I've been speaking on constantly. We have the first generation in American history that is not able to afford a home. I have 7 children. My oldest one is in a home. He's 40 years old, but all the other ones, they all went to the best schools, they have good educations, they have great jobs, and they cannot afford a home. And we are going from a nation of owners to a nation of renters. And when that happens, we're going to go from being citizens to being subjects. America is an ownership society. That's what built the middle class in this country. When I was a boy, our country owned half the wealth on the face of the earth. And the American middle class was the greatest economic engine in human history. And the reason for that is after World War II, we got every American into a home. Through the GI Bill, through the road program. When I was a kid, the average wage was about $5,000 a year, and the average cost of a home was about $6,000 a year. Everybody could get into a home, and there was all kinds of government programs that gave you either interest-free homes or very, very low interest loans. And what happened, because people were in homes, first of all, if you own a home, you care about your community, you care about your police, your firefighters, your education. You go to the planning board meetings, you go to the school meetings, and you care about the appearance of your home, your neighbors, etc. Most of all, importantly, you own equity, which means you can borrow money. So if you have an entrepreneurial impulse, you can pursue it. You can borrow money and you can build a bowling alley or a yoga studio or a saloon or a sporting goods store or a bookstore or something. And that created that access to capital is what created this ferment in our country that built the American middle class. And we're going now in the opposite direction. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is inflation. And then, the average cost of a home in our country has been gone from $215,000 2 years ago to over $400,000 today, and the interest rates have gone from 3% to 7%, and nobody can afford them except these big investment companies, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Fidelity, that are buying up all of our homes. Last year, I think about almost 30% of the new home purchases went to these investment houses, and they are, these companies own 88% of the S&P 500, so they own all the business. And now they're going after all of the residences and all the single-family homes, and that's not good for America. Well, number one, I'm going to make it illegal or unbeneficial through the tax code and through other, there's legislation that we already have, model legislation, to stop these companies from buying our home and force them to disgorge the home, which will increase the available housing stock and drop the prices. I'm also going to offer incentives to local communities to get rid of restrictive zoning codes. That there's all these really cool, new, innovative ways to build the homes. There are a lot of prefabricated homes, tiny homes, small homes, annex homes, and they're beautiful. They're not going to wreck your community. And people ought to be able, we need to relax some of the zoning codes, the planning codes, so that those companies, those prefab homes are very cheap. They build them in a factory. I'm going to have a national Job Corps program where kids can go, instead of going into the military, they can get the same benefits for working for their community. And we're going to teach, there's 280 abandoned malls in our country. We're going to take those malls and turn them into learning centers where people can learn the trades. We're going to build prefab homes in those centers, very cheap. Kids will learn HVAC, they'll learn carpentry, they'll learn electricity, they'll learn plumbing, and this is part of rebuilding our industrial base. And we'll produce low-cost homes that we can put on empty lots in our cities. So many of our cities, I was in Detroit the other day, and there's parts of the city where 40 or 50% of it are abandoned lots. Well, that's a lot of places for good housing. And I have a 3% mortgage proposal, the same thing that my uncle did, John Kennedy, when he was president. He gave a 3% mortgage that was guaranteed by the federal government for a certain category, for young people, first-time home buyer. That would allow the federal government to guarantee your loans, so you can get a much lower cost. You can now compete with BlackRock because they for the cost of money. And you can get a low-interest loan, so we can get this generation of kids into a home. So it's very, very important to me. In terms of small business, that is, I am a champion of small business. About 42% of the jobs in this country are small business, and or 52% of the jobs are from small business. We have a war on small business in this country. In fact, there's a federal law that says that 27% of federal contracts must go to small business. You know how many went this year to small business? 3%. Oh, they're violating the agencies are violating their own laws. And all of the big federal programs and subsidies all go to big business. Virtually nothing goes to small business. I'm going to change that around. I'm going to make the small business the champion of our country, and I'm going to do everything I can to make it, to restore Main Street on this country. We're done with Wall Street. It's now Main Street built America, and we need to return to Main Street now.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Just one last favor. My son, he's 16 years old. He wants to study biology marine, and he was fan of you many time ago. And he all the time say, "Mommy, Kennedy, and I meet you finally in Latino Wall Street in the event on Gabi." And I say, "Oh my God, I know why you love Kennedy. I really want to give to my son that you say hi to JP, and he wants to know how did you get into conservation while you were when you were young. Just that's all. Thank you.
Hello, JP. I'm very, very happy to meet you, and I'm very, very happy that you're going to go into conservation, that you're going to become a marine biologist. And I hope you'll come work for the waterkeeper movement. We have a lot of marine biologists who work for us. We put them to work restoring kelp beds, restoring coral reefs, studying fish populations, working as expert witnesses in our cases when we sue big polluters to protect habitat. So there's a lot of jobs for you out there trying to protect the environment. I did exactly what you did. I loved nature when I was a kid. I tried to spend every bit of my time in the water, under the water. I got my first scuba tank when I was 9 years old, and I never came out of the water after that. So I love the ocean. I love the bottom of the ocean most, and I hope that you have as big a love affair with nature as I had, because it's enriched my life enormously, and I love everything about it. And I hope I get to meet you someday, and maybe if I'm back at Waterkeeper, we'll get you a job.
Cool.
Well, amazing. Just amazing questions and such powerful answers. I'm very inspired by this conversation. I'm going to give the last question to Diego, who was the last one to join us, because unfortunately Carolina got stuck at Univision, so I don't think she'll be back on. Diego.
So, Mr. Kennedy, again, thank you. Just a quick follow-up on the question asked by Gisela, I think, which was very nice. And I wanted to also address this housing problem that is becoming a major concern for all families at all levels in the US. So the currently existing statistic is that there are more available houses than homeless people in America. So I fail to understand, and I would like a little bit of your explanation on how increasing the offer is going to solve the problem. If already there's so many empty houses all around, and maybe it's connected to what you said about these big companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street holding all these assets. And is this related to macroeconomics due to the fact that the US is $33 trillion in debt, which represents 120% of the yearly GDP per capita, of the yearly GDP? So in a way, is it feasible to think about going back to a macroeconomic level about funding, like you said, small businesses to trigger again a productive economy with that huge amount of debt that is linked to the fact that the rest of the world needs to consume US dollars in order to increase rotation and increase the demand and the value for the dollar itself? Is it still a viable strategy to think about decoupling the dollar as a commodity that is traded worldwide due to the effort, effects, and in a way, hegemony from the US around the world? And how can we decouple that from the fact that, as a very simple effect, there's a bunch of houses that are empty, that these huge companies have no incentive of selling, even that right now there are more people on the street than available houses?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question.
Sorry.
I mean, it spans micro and macroeconomic theory and solutions. So let me, just give you some sort of simple touchstones. I think you're right that all that excess housing stock is housing stock that is being held by these big corporations and that want to turn it into rental properties, are being held for other tax, because there's depreciation taxes that allow you to, that basically subsidize the purchase of these houses by these giant corporations, and we got to get rid of that benefit because it's a perverse incentive. The issue of homelessness has been really, really well studied and documented. The issue of homelessness has nothing to do with the availability of housing stock. It is directly correlated to the price of housing.
Yeah.
And you'll see, homelessness is also linked to drug addiction to mental illness, but that link is very, very small. The real correlation is just directly to housing prices. So if you, any city that has high housing prices, you're going to see a lot of homeless. And the 50% of American homeless are in California. And that's because California has the highest housing prices. And the city with the highest housing prices in the country is San Francisco, and that is the center for the homeless explosion. LA also, I think the average cost of a house in LA is $850,000. And that explains why we have all these homeless. They're people who, over 50% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency in their family. And if you're living in that cohort and you see the engine light come on your car, it's like the apocalypse. It's the end of the world for you. Because you know you're not going to be able to afford a mechanic, you're not going to be able to get to work, and you won't be able to pay your rent, and you're going to end up on the sidewalk. And really, mental illness is connected with homelessness, but people who are homeless become mentally ill. There's all kinds of studies that show even after 2 or 3 days on the street, you develop mental illness. So the real connection is, those are people you see live in those tents were just regular Americans who got 2 flat tires at the same time, and they just couldn't, they couldn't pay their bills.
No, absolutely.
And reduce the price of housing stock. And in the ways that I'm talking about, we need to reduce the price of housing. And we need to do that by expanding the availability of housing stock and making sure that we have a building program. We're building millions of houses a year. And I have a whole revenue of programs to make sure that happens. Well, in terms of the national debt, the debt is now $35 trillion. It just turned $35 trillion. President Trump said that he was going to balance the budget, and instead he ran up $8 trillion. President Biden is about to hit $8 trillion. He's running up $1 trillion every 3 months, adding to the debt. It's unsustainable. We now pay more to service the debt than we do for our military budget. Within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar we collect in taxes is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100%. So it's existential. We were allowed to run up that debt, as you point out, because we have because the dollar is the world's reserve currency. All the other countries have to buy it, and that created the demand that we could borrow unlimited amounts of money. And that's no longer true. In the first quarter of this year, the Chinese, which hold most U.S. debt, 50% of U.S. debt, dumped $53 billion of U.S. currency. And they don't want it anymore. And that is the beginning. And then we're watching the growth of BRICS, which is, the transition of the world off the U.S. dollar into world reserve currency. We need to hold on to that. I have a plan for integrating Bitcoin into it and keeping us the world's reserve currency forever. But it has enabled a lot of bad policies, including the loss of America's industrial base, which is what we're talking about. And that is because, the misuse of borrowing and the financialization of our economy.
For sure.
I want to reindustrialize our economy. And I have many, we're running out of time, so I can't really talk about those programs, but, I'll just leave you with one thought. We cannot cut our way out of that size debt. I'm going to do dramatic cuts, 50% of the military budget. I'm going to cut all of the 4.3 trillion in chronic disease. I'm going to get rid of a lot of that, et cetera, and save a lot of money. But you can't just save money. You actually have to take money and invest it in ways that grow GDP. And that means investing in small business. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure out, one of the ways to invest in small businesses in this country is through childcare, right? You create $1 million spent on military creates 2 U.S. jobs. $1 million spent on childcare creates 18, because you allow people to go to work in their local business. One of the big issues in our country ultimately is healthcare, and that is one of the biggest penalties for small businesses.
Absolutely.
There's other countries where the government pays the health care and they can produce products a fraction of the cost that we do, because our small businesses are paying for the health care for their employees.
For sure. And if I may, very quickly, and just in 30 seconds, and thank you so much again for the time and for the invitation. And I just wanted to ask your opinion about the role of social media during this campaign, which I know has been very polemical, especially during last events, and who has given platform to who, and the role of different social medias during the different candidates. What's your take on this post-truth notion, or how people are making their political decisions or taking a stance informed or misinformed by the huge amount of fake news and misinformation and psyop propaganda that we're exposed to in social media?
Yeah, I'm not scared of misinformation. I think that's a psyop to get us all scared of misinformation. Misinformation to me is not a big threat. The remedy for misinformation is more information. I mean, my kids, I get fooled by stuff like AI stuff on the internet sometimes. I'll send something to my kids and they'll say, "Dad, that's fake. It's AI." We already know. So you have a generation of kids who are discerning, who know how to, are skeptical, and that's what we want. I don't want the government controlling anything, and I don't want censorship. And I've had to litigate this. I won a case against Biden because he ordered all the social media companies to censor me. And that, I had an advertisement that was done called "Who is Bobby Kennedy?" and it got 150 million views in one day, and the next day it was banned on YouTube and Facebook, etc. So these companies, the only company that said they weren't censoring me was Twitter. And yet people were sending us screenshots all the time showing that they tried to follow me. I got frozen at 3 million. I could not grow beyond it. And people would send our campaign screenshots of them following me, and then it automatically unfollowing me immediately. And we ultimately collected a lot of those. We sent them to James Musk and Elon Musk, as we kept calling them and saying, "We're being censored."
No.
They said, "No, you're not." And when we sent them those, they went back and they looked and they said, "Yeah, it was buried in the algorithm and we didn't know about it. And it was there before we bought the company, and they've been censored for all that time." So, it's been a real penalty for me. I'm censored on mainstream media. I've only done 5 interviews. NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, only 5 interviews in 19 months. They won't let me on. They publish defamations and insults about me all the time and mischaracterizations, but they will not let me on to talk. They will not allow me to talk to their audience. And I'm also banned on most social media. So, we're slow walked or shadow banned. I've had to sue the federal government. I won that lawsuit, but it's really distorted this campaign, and it's one of the reasons that I'm not on the debating stage, because they've been able to suppress my support through censorship on both social media and mainstream media. Anyway, I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you the truth.
You guys, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it. We're gonna have to end, but if you wouldn't mind just one more minute. Carolina is back. She had an issue at the news station. If you can just go ahead.
It's so nice to see you again. Thank you for your time. I think this has been an amazing conversation. So many topics, diverse topics. I would like to close just with one question, just to summarize basically what you guys discussed, and something that I think is a big elephant in the room. My question is, if you were president of the United States, for what action or policy do you would like to be remembered? I mean, in other words, what's your main policy issue right now? I mean, as a person, as a candidate. And secondly, I would like to ask you about
the information that came out today about a meeting that was intended with Kamala Harris, apparently asking for a cabinet position in exchange of support. Also, the possibilities of supporting Donald Trump, since he has asked you about it directly, and there's a video that your son published about it. If you can give us a response about that, too.
Yeah, that's fake news. I didn't ask Kamala Harris for a cabinet position, but I've reached out to all the candidates. I met with Trump. I've met with the Libertarian candidate, Chase Oliver. I want to meet with all the candidates to talk about dampening down the rhetoric and unifying our country. And, also talk about some of the issues about ending the wars, etc. The other candidates have met with me. Kamala Harris has said that she does not want to, but no, I don't believe that I could work. I think it would be tough for me to work with that campaign unless they made or with their administration, unless they committed to, a lot of different changes.
Yeah.
But in terms of my legacy, I want to end the wars, the forever wars. I want to, make America a leader in a multipolar world. I'm going to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country. I want to end the polarization, the vilification, the division in America. And I'm excited about bringing AI and blockchain back to this country and exploring its potential to help humanity to make government more transparent and responsive. Rather than, I'm conscious of the peril that, it can also be used to impose totalitarian controls on our society. So those are, some of the principal issues that I'm going to deal with. And I want to thank all of you for your questions and for being such a wonderful audience.
Thank you so much. We unfortunately have to end, but we want to thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone who watched this live and all the amazing panelists that had wonderful questions in this Latino Town Hall. So follow us for more and maybe next one. So thank you. Have a good evening.